The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar by SolutionXchg on SAP-centric document archive and how to eliminate document not found errors in QA testing scenarios. We're happy you could attend and hope you find the topic today of interest to you. My name is Kristen Gerling, and I will be your host throughout the session. And our presentation today will take around 45 minutes, and we have 10 to 15 minutes reserved for questions at the end. A few procedural and technical notes before we start. All participants are on mute during the full duration of the webinar. If you have any questions or concerns, or you cannot hear us, please alert us through the questions panel on the side as part of your GoToMeeting user panel there. Again, for questions, please use the question panel. Also, if for some reason the volume is not loud enough. For those that are interested, we will gladly send out a transcript after the webinar. You can let us know via an email to info@SolutionXchg.com. But let's get started. And my business partner, Jochen Hager, and myself will actually be doing the presentation today. And before we really dive into the topic, we would both like to share a little bit about the experience we've had in the past working for over 20 years in the SAP archive market, as it is relevant to the solution that we will talk about to you today. So, Jochen, why don't you start and give us an introduction on your experience?
Thank you, Kristen. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jochen Hager. I'm glad to be here on the webinar with you, and we'll guide you through the demo portion a little later in the webinar. A little bit about myself. I've been in the SAP archiving space for over 25 years now. I've worked with very early on with SAP in designing and actually speccing the SAP Archive Link interface. Back in those days, I was working for Ixos, now OpenText, and we were building the very first connector to SAP to connect a storage management system, what we today call an electronic archive or enterprise content management system, to the SAP system to store documents, financial documents, HR documents, and so on. And over the years, I started out, as I said, with doing development work. I did C, C++ programming, other programming tasks, led a team of developers, and we dove into first custom implementations from there. I worked with around 80 customers in Europe back then directly in customizing the SAP system and the archiving system to make to display documents. Then I got the opportunity to move to the United States and worked in consulting. Worked with a team of with 4 team leads and a good number of consultants in various projects all around imaging, SAP imaging, and data archiving. And for the last few years, worked for a variety of archiving companies, including other German companies, and formed with Kristen as a partnership SolutionXchg a few years ago. And while we were experiencing working with clients and solving their problems, address their business requirements, we always noted certain things that didn't work as well as they should. And while some companies and some products we worked with and offered overcome some of these problems, others seem to be unsolved for many years. And about a year ago, that drove us to evaluate what we could potentially do about it and what we can do to fix some of these problems. And one attempt to overcome a very specific problem is what we are presenting to you today. Specifically, the problem that you get when you do a system copy, SAP system copy. Usually, you get 404 errors, document not found errors, and the presentation today will guide you through that, and the demo hopefully will clarify how we do it and how that can be of use to you. And with that, I hand it back to you, Kristen. Thank you. Kristen, are you still on mute?
Thank you, Jochen. Yeah,
yep.
Thank you. Yeah, a few words on my background. I've started roughly over 20 years ago working in the SAP, a little over 20 years ago actually, in the SAP consulting environment, and have a lot of experience working with as a module consultant, as well as when I started with OpenText in 2002 with the SAP Archive Link interface and any type of document management scenarios in the SAP environment. I have done various projects over the consulting years between 2002, when I got introduced into document archiving around SAP, with various archive vendors. I have worked with Documentum, with FileNet, with OpenText, obviously, SAP Content Server, a solution that Jochen and me resell, KGS, and various others throughout the different customer projects that I was engaged in. Also, these projects were very different in scope and ranged from true just business process improvement solutions implementations to how to tackle mergers and splits in an ever-changing corporate environment where one buys the other or sells off parts of their businesses, as well as business process outsourcing. I've been on a very large multi-year project that was global, trying to source some of the processing document processing scenarios out to different partners in different regions of the globe. And with that experience, as Jochen also said, with his experience, we came across the one scenario that always gave headaches, and that most of the archive vendors have not solved with their products, with their core products, and that is around testing and what happens after a system refresh. And with that, let's go to the next slide. So what is a common scenario after a system refresh is that either you have to do a lot of work and basis to refresh also your archive, so that all these transactional records that you've brought across from your production system to your non-production system have these links still as valid links attached, or if you choose to not do that, these links might be broken. Another thing that I've experienced with very many of my clients is when these system copies were done hastily, a lot of the settings in the OAC 0 table were not updated accordingly, and then all of a sudden test documents went into the production environment, and it started becoming a mess to manage this. So that's when Jochen and I stuck our heads together and thought, how can we solve this problem? And our solution is the SolutionXchg ACC, which is the archive content connector. So basically, it is a small utility that allows you to connect different archive environments, your production archive environment, your QA environment, to an SCP system, facilitating testing and development so that you have valid links for all the data that came across your system copy from your QA environment if you choose to. We're trying to avoid extra configuration steps that need to take place after a system copy, avoid accidental transport errors, like some customers have their content repositories configured differently from production to QA, and there can be some, we will help you straighten that out so that that you can't transport something across that goes into the wrong content repository. And the nice thing about this little utility, it seamlessly integrates with SAP, inherits all the SAP securities that you set up in SAP, and it also seamlessly integrates with any archive link compliant archive. Very easy to install and to configure. Like I said, it's really a simple utility. It's not a major implementation effort. So what we wanted to highlight in this webinar is our first use case around testing. Our ACC has multiple use cases, and testing is the first one we wanted to introduce to you. Another one we're going to highlight in one of the slides at the end. We'll have another webinar on one that is around migration, but today the focus will be solely on testing. So what happens after with the ACC when a user has to start testing document retrieval for some either production support case or for a project, another implementation project, a update that is patches that have to go in or something, and they have to do certain tests in order to get approval to move the new features into your production SAP system. Well, if you've done your system refresh, then with the ACC, the users will have display access to the documents that reside on the production archive. They can just click on it, drill down on it, just like they're accessing the documents today, and whatever document was attached to the transaction in production will come up for display in the production environment. The next thing is what happens when they do need to, when part of their test scenario requires the user to actually create a new document. With the SolutionXchg Archive Content Connector, that new document will automatically be stored in your QA archive. It will not go to your production archive. So you have read access from production only, but not write access. And what happens if a user is trying to delete or accidentally trying to delete a document that is attached to or that is on the production archive that they're displaying from QA? Well, those delete requests will get rejected. They are not capable of deleting any of the documents that are on the production archive that are displayed from QA. So strictly read access. In some cases, we also have the requirement from customers that they would like to, hang on, I'm sorry, I was jumping ahead of the slides, but when they're actually deleting a document from QA, obviously that delete request will go through, and that document in QA that is on the QA archive that they had freshly created in QA, that will actually also get deleted if they have the permissions accordingly in SAP. With certain archives or certain customers, there might be a concern as far as what content that is on the production archive will I allow my users in QA to see. You have the choice with us to design a placeholder document that explains to the user that there is still a valid document existing on the production archive when they've clicked on that link, but the security or the auditor guidelines in the organization do not allow to display the content of that because it is not to be seen by everyone, and it should not be IT personnel that has access to HR records, for example, on certain employees. So you can disguise the content of the document so that the tester knows the test is actually a valid test and it's working. It's just not displaying the specific content of the document. So you can that is an option that can be turned on for customers, and it can be turned on for specific content repositories as well as for everything. So you could decide that only for HR documents you want those placeholders, but for financial documents you would be okay displaying the actual content. You can also, as you see, you could also have scenarios where you're using the ACC with multiple more than just 2 archives. If you have a 3-tier landscape, we can configure that as well. Again, creating new documents. When a test user, even with a placeholder, creates a new document, that document moves right into the QA archive, is fully visible to the user. And deletes obviously are not allowed from production, even with a placeholder document as well. With that, I would like to turn it over to Jochen to give you a demo so that you can actually get a sense for the look and feel of how this displays for the users. Let me switch over the presentation rights to Jochen, and
Thank you, Kristen. I am sharing my screen right now. Kristen, you should be able to see the SAP window.
Yes, I am.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to run through most of the scenarios Kristen just explained using the slides, and we want to look at some of the customizing options as well as system behavior for these specific use cases. We are here in a production SAP system, and in this production SAP system, we're taking a look at OAC 0 transaction, right, which is the one that is used to connect archive servers to specific content repositories. And content repositories are SAP's internal way to connect actual documents, business objects, to archived documents in an archive. So there's content repositories for HR documents, content repositories for FI documents, and so on. Usually a 2-letter acronym is used. Here, specifically, we're looking at content repository T2, and the configuration are those 3 elements here, which are most important. SAP content server is used the standard SAP product, just to keep this vendor neutral as much as we can. We're using the standard SAP product. And the HTTP server we are connecting to is called SAP Content Server Prod. So we're connecting to a production environment from a production SAP system. And just looking at what happens next, we will actually bring up a document. We're going into personnel file administration, simple personnel file administration, attaching documents to just personnel records, standard, some of the more basic functionality, just looking at info type and a specific info type here, going into extras, display, facsimile, and this can look different for different customers. This is just an example. We're using some of the generic SAP functionality, and we click on display facsimiles, and in this production system, just to set the stage, we have two documents that are associated with transaction records. There's one XYZ company offer letter, and there is a W-2 Word template that is connected to this particular employee. Now, in the next scenario, we are looking at a system where we just did a production copy. So this is a QA system. In the QA system, if it's just a one-to-one copy, the configuration for the logical archives, the content repositories, will be copied just as well. That's what Kristen talked about before. So with an unmodified copy, we will have SAP Content Server Prod in the OAC0 transaction. Now, some of you use after copy scripts to change that, and there is a couple of other mechanisms. Here in our particular use case, we're changing that manually just to make a point. And in this QA system, we are now taking a look at those very same documents we just looked at in production. And when we do display facsimile for these documents, this is exactly where it breaks down. We get a 404 error. Document doesn't exist because the link entry is still there. So the SAP system thinks it has the document. But because it's pointing, QA for safety reasons is pointing to a QA archive, the document cannot be brought up and we cannot display the document. So this is really the main problem scenario we're trying to solve, that in a QA system, the links to production documents are actually broken. And moving on, we go into the next phase of the demo, and we will actually create now in the QA document without making any other changes. So the ACC is not in play yet. We're just creating a new document to make a point. We're adding a document here, another HR document. We're to that same 000 info type 1000 personnel number. We're picking a document from the file system and adding that document to our configuration in the QA system. I need to give this a second. It's created now. And we are going back to document display. We're displaying original documents. And of course, we still have the two links in there that are error documents. Those still come up as errors. The ACC is not yet involved. But the third document, the one we just archived into the QA document, that of course is there because we're pointing to a QA archive from a QA system. And the new document was obviously archived into that QA archive. So it's a fully functional archive in the background, but at this point, just the QA archive. Now, we're going one step further now. We're adding or changing the configuration OAC0, and pointing to the ACC. And now that scenario that Kristen showed in the slides, that wheel, that roundabout comes into play. The calls that go out to the archive now first go to the ACC. And for that, we have to enter an HTTP server name, correct server name, the correct port, and then the correct HTTP script, which is the SolutionXchg server ACC archive content connector. And we're saving the configuration, we're checking the configuration, connection test was successful. And now we can go back and look at again at our 3 test documents and see what happens now. If we are open display facsimiles, first we need to, the system asks us, is it okay? You change the server, is it okay to connect to that? We're getting 3 documents, and now voila, all 3 documents are showing up. We now have the 2 original production documents as well as the newly archived document we created. So we have the QA test document. We are getting the offer letter and the W2 document, and no more 400 errors. So what actually happened here in the background is that that little wheel came into action. The call went to the SolutionXchg archive content connector. The content connector first probed in a read-only mode the production archive, pulled the documents it found there from the production archive in a secured read-only mode, full SAP security in play, SAP security certificates fully honored, and HTTPS as well in function. So the original documents from the production archive are pulled up, as well as the 1 document we archived in the QA environment. Now, to take this use case 1 step further, in the next scenario we're looking at, we're actually adding another document in the scenario just to show that the ACC is also able to add, to handle document additions correctly. So we're adding store and assign another document to that very same HR personnel number, same info type. We're creating a document, pick another one from the file system, adding that into the solution. And after a short period, we get document created successfully. Document ID was issued. We're going back into display documents. We're displaying now 4 documents. And we will see that now in an ACC scenario, ACC supported scenario, we have the original 2 original documents, no 404 errors, and 1 and 2 test documents that are correctly stored in the test archive. So that was the next slide Kristen showed, where she showcased that the production archive is very much protected by read restrictions, delete restrictions, and at the same time we can correctly and safely archive new documents into the QA archive in this particular scenario. And the last show element I want to show you is that placeholder document Kristen was talking about. Now to do that, I need to do some configuration changes. And while we do that, I will also show you how simple the configuration on the ACC really is. And the ACC is has a text file based configuration that we need to adjust. We have here configuration sections for the first attempt, the second attempt, the third attempt. The first attempt, as we saw in the demo, goes against the SAP production system with the proper configuration elements. And right now, service mode substitute document is starred out, so that's commented out. That's what we saw in the little demo just now. We're now removing the comment and restarting the test. And while we do that, we will take out that star here in the configuration file and then save the file back to its location. And the star is gone. And we're doing we need to tell the ACC to reread its configuration file, which can be easily done by doing a reset request to the tool. The tool will, the reset request will prompt it to read the configuration again on the next try. So we go back to the ACP system. Now we're going back into that very same display transaction. Remember, before we had 4 documents coming up, 2 were from production, 2 were from QA. Now we will see that with the substitute document mode, 2 documents, the 2 production documents, are actually kind of blanked out. Instead of the actual document, a placeholder document appears. So here's what happens in the background. The check is still performed. So it still reaches out to the production archive server trying to find out, is there a document? And if there is a document, it will come back, okay, yes, I found a document, but the document itself will not be displayed. Instead of displaying the original document, which could have salary information that's not to be disclosed in a QA environment, or other things, a placeholder document is displayed. So that serves the purpose that for sensitive archives, we can still get rid of the 404 error, but at the same time, we can safeguard or disguise the actual document. And here's a big blank space on this PDF for one particular reason, and just to showcase you, we can make this look whatever it's supposed to look like. Your company logo can be here. The whole PDF can be designed differently than what we have right here. But we try to make it very easy to understand, and therefore there is text on this document saying this document is displayed because you attempted to retrieve an original document from a restricted archive, and service settings prevented you in your current environment to retrieve the original document from the targeted archive server. The link used is valid and fully functional in an unrestricted environment. So very easily, very clearly explaining to the user what just has happened, why he sees this document, proving that its test case is valid, but at the same time providing safety mechanisms if you wish so. Doesn't have to be that way, but that's an additional security feature we made available. And of course, the QA documents we created, those documents are still available just as they were before. And I believe this concludes the demo we did. Let me fast forward this in. And yes, this concluded the demo. Thank you very much. I give it back to you, Kristen.
Thank you, Jochen. Let me switch over again. And minimize this. So to summarize what we've just seen, we can provide read access to archive documents from any SAP system, no matter which archive server they were archived to initially. And the document access is handled using all of SAP's security features. So you can do the secure URL, SecKey version, in SAP, the configuration flag is no signature versus signature. You can also do HTTPS. Obviously, from an SAP transactional aspect, you use the user's security roles and profiles to access documents. No documents are archived in the wrong archive by accident. The users in QA will only have access to write data to a QA archive. They do not have access to write any data to a different archive server. It strips down some of the client copy activities, especially for those of you that are actually trying to copy over your SAP content server database to a non-production SAP content server database in order to facilitate anything like this. And the nice thing is that for those that have certain restrictions about what content will they share to users operating on a non-production SAP system, is these placeholder documents. I mentioned earlier that there are several business use case scenarios for this functionality that the ACC provides. Obviously, what we've showcased today is the safe access to production archives from non-prod SAP systems for any type of testing. The next use case will be, and this is again because that's what we're coming across in our line of business today a lot, because we are helping customers replace their existing archive systems or help them in merger and split situations or divestitures where they need to give access to certain types of documents to the companies that they've spun off, and so on. The next one is seamless access to legacy archives during archive migrations and cutovers, where it's all about migrating from one archive to another, but you want to limit your downtime. You want to have no cutover weekends where you have to process a certain subset of the data in your migration. You just want to turn on your new archive from day one, write new data into your new archive, and migrate the old data in the background. Again, same thing for business transformation events like the divestitures and mergers, and also for customers that have archive systems that they consider more or less end of life, and they just want to keep them running because they have data on there that maybe they have to keep for another 3 years, but they don't really want to go through the headache of doing a migration or have the capital to do a migration, don't want to incur the cost of it. So they can easily keep access to that archive while already writing into the new archive. The ACC is a comprehensive offering on our website. We have download capabilities for you there. You can download a 30-day trial version that is basically a full functionality license, but it's limited for 30 days. You can do the installation yourself. It is pretty straightforward. All the documentation exists on the website. Or you can engage us and we will do the installation for free for you. I mean, we want this. If you are willing to test our ACC out in your environment, we would like to be a partner in this with you. We would help you install it, we will help you configure it, and we want your tests with it to be successful. So please feel free to engage us when you're trying this out so that we can help you get it working properly. We do provide enterprise pricing or per server pricing, and it can be a single server license versus a perpetual license. and that is sold without maintenance and support payment requirements. So it's a one-time fee, and that is it, and you can use the product as long as you want to. Upgrades for existing customers when there's a significant release, new release released, then upgrades to existing customers can be done at discounted rates. I said this, that we're doing the next webinar on the migration scenarios. So I wanted to highlight here that we have scheduled another webinar on June 27th, and from 1 p.m. to 1:45 Eastern. If you would like to also attend that, please visit our website. It is on the website, and you can actually sign up for that webinar as well. Just a little bit on the background on SolutionXchg. We had mentioned it in when we were introducing ourselves. We do everything from implementation consulting to working with the software vendors that you're seeing here displayed for implementations, and helping you get the most out of your archive link compliant archiving solution, or switching you from a high price solution to something that is more cost efficient but provides the same features like the KGS component. Also, we do with Eternity, we provide warm compliance. If there's any Centera customers, Centera has announced the end of sale of its product, and a lot of customers are looking for alternatives to switch to a more modern technology, software designed warm compliant storage, and that is Eternity. And then for our data archiving customers and customers that are interested in DART, we partner with a partner to be able to resell it to you, PBS and TJC products that focus around data archiving, not so much the document side of things. Here's our contact information. Again, if you would like a transcript of the slides, please feel free to contact us at info@solutionexchg.com or drop us an email and just ask, and we will send you the slides through, or if you want to show this to other colleagues, if you want us to demo this to other members in your teams, please reach out to us and we'll gladly do this. Okay, so that concludes the presentation section of our webinar for today. We hope you found the topic interesting and you got some good takeaways. Thanks for listening, and we're now opening the floor to any questions. So please feel free to post your questions in the questions bar on the side. Let's give everyone a few moments to think of any questions. I have one. One of our attendees is asking, is this working with SAP security keys or HTTPS? Jochen, can you answer that?
Absolutely, yes. It handles HTTPS requests, so you configure your SAP OC0 transaction for HTTPS, and your request is transferred through a secured pipeline to the ACC, and then the ACC issues a secured request to the underlying archive just as well. So the whole communication line of communication is fully HTTPS secured. It can also handle partial security. It can be HTTPS secured up to the ACC. And then if your underlying archive, because it's an older legacy archive, doesn't support HTTPS, it can drop down the security level to HTTP while maintaining to your new archive in a migration scenario the HTTPS communication. The same is true for the security key portion of the URL. If you have turned on the SCP security for document retrieval and your URLs to original documents are signed, then these documents will be retrieved with security signature, and the ACC will function correctly, handling the security and passing on the security key to the archive that serves up the document, and that will be correctly evaluated as required. And by the way, because this is all archive link based, it really works with any business scenario. It can be HR business scenarios, personnel file business scenarios, invoice manager business scenarios, can be tools, SAP tools from different vendors for your business scenarios or financial document retrieval scenarios. All of those are completely transparent. This really handles the underlying retrieval requests and archive requests to the actual archives. Thank you.
Thanks, Johan. And and then there is another question. Excuse me. Can I also use the ACC in data archiving scenarios? Very good question. Data archiving is a little bit more tricky than documents, because the storage of the file is only the archive link compliant part, but it's using ADK files, and the ADK files have the SID of the source SAP system encoded in them. So we can work with you. We have solutions for that, but we can work with you on making those data archiving files available as well. But the ACC out of the box as it is today cannot handle that because of the SID conversion problem between production and QA SIDs. I don't see any further questions. So with that, I would like to thank you very, very much for attending our webinar today, and we hope you found everything interesting, and hope you will join us for the next one when we talk a little bit more about complexities around migrations and how the ACC can help customers there. Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.